June 17th. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Patterson,
Present.
Dr. Bristol,
Present.
Mrs. Walker,
Present.
Mrs. Pender,
Present.
Chairman Browning.
Present.
All members are here.
All right, thank you. You've been given the minutes, so would you like a few minutes to look over the minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anyone need more time? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the committee minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Well, before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to the board members and the superintendent and the staff for the work that's being done to comply with this order or agreement. Thank you, especially for standing up for the students, the teachers, and the parents in the committee, in the community, because I know it's been kind of pressing the past couple of months. But as we agreed to the last time, we decided to focus this one meeting with the referral process to get children inside the disciplinary process. So with the data that we received, we want everybody to please be very familiar with it, as we'll address that in some depth the next time. We had some changes inside the school district, and one of those will be in a department that's going to work with us as a committee to support our work. And because we have a condensed schedule tonight, we'll move very quickly. Remember, next time we've got to get on more than one item. We have a lot to do, or gather more meetings. So at this time, I'd like to have either Dr. Moore to introduce this new person, or, yes, sir.
Good evening, first and foremost, and thank you, Mr. Browning, for the opportunity to acknowledge Mr. Seymour, which is a long, hard, thoughtful process on how we ensure that equity continues to be at the forefront of this district and that we're providing access to all students, regardless of the zip code in which they live, regardless of the color of their skin. But we as a school system unite every end of our county together in order to ensure that we're maximizing the full potential of all children. And this isn't an endeavor that's going to be done in a year. This is a multi-year focus. It's going to really require some synergy of the school system and synergy of our community. So I'm excited to announce through a great deal of reflection and prayer, Mr. Seymour will be serving as the Assistant Superintendent of Advocacy, Access, and Student Affairs. I'm still getting used to it. So I should have rehearsed that one. But very excited. On Tuesday, we're going to highlight some of the work he's already done in the district in creating and establishing relationships. I'll talk about that then. But I say that to say that he has truly hit the ground running. And I'd like for him to come up, say a few words, and provide this committee with his charge regarding this body of work.
To the chair, Mr. Browning, who is definitely my friend. You know me from past. I believe in reclamation, keeping people together. I've, of course, like Dr. Moore said, hit the ground running. I've been in places and learned some information that I thought I would know, being a resident of Gifford, but actually learn new things. And that's evident within the amount of time that I've been in this position to have picked up that information. Says that it's a lot more out there. And it's going to be my goal to continue to keep that effort, keep it alive, and promote those individuals in our towns that do have something to say but haven't been heard, haven't been recognized. And I know that they can definitely lead our younger ones to a better life. Additionally, you know, putting this group together based on the interviews that I've noticed in the past few days, I feel very comfortable that we're going to put that team together to, if nothing else, reach partial unitary status and eventually move to full. I know that we have the team that can do that. And it's going to be a unified effort. And with these individuals and their backgrounds and their histories, I'm not going to say who's going to be chosen because we do not know. But I know that we do have those people who are capable, based on their backgrounds and their history, of bringing people together and unifying districts and moving them in directions that better the lives for our students and parents. One last thing, I really pride myself on communicating with parents, and I enjoy doing that. No matter how bad the situation, I can spend the time to listen. I'm not ready to delegate that authority as of yet, and I think with the communication that I have with our parents, they are trusting in me to do the things necessary for their child to be successful. And I know for a fact that many of our parents who may have issues that a lot of times people don't have the time to hear, but I do. And if I can hear those voices and utilize that information to make things better for their children, I'm the person for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I have known Mr. Seymour a long time. Looked up to him. He was a mentor to me, so he's a really good guy. Now, at this time, you know, we have a lot to get to, a lot of reports to do, to report to the court and other things. Dr. Moore, at this time, were you prepared to lay out some of what's ahead of us? as far as from what you see on your end?
Yes, sir, I am. And then let them turn me on, because I put together 2 slides at the end of my initial presentation. So as soon as they give me access. And as they set that up, just a little bit of background. As you know, we have been problem solving on how to ensure that we're effectively communicating with the Equity Committee, as well as receiving feedback from the Equity Committee. And there's a great deal of confusion and disconnect regarding the school system and the purpose of this particular committee in terms of looking at the body of work around the joint plan and the progress monitoring around the implementation of that particular plan. So as we've problem solved through that, we've had the opportunity to bring a number of items to the board and take items to the board, because that's the highest level of authority that we can have within our system. So one of the items that I took really looked at the structure on how we are interacting, receiving the recommendations made by this committee. So when you look at this schedule, and before you look at it, actually the process is, as you make recommendations, you as a committee deserve the opportunity to understand how those recommendations will be implemented, if those recommendations will be implemented. That was an item that I took to the board, and it's very simple as form. The committee will make recommendations. I will bring those recommendations to the school board. I will embed them into our district strategic plan, which will now be aligned to our African American Achievement Plan, and bring back to the board and both the committee the recommendations that we will be using or will not be using. So 2 big things I've learned over the course of this year as a result of this accountability committee, because that's really what it is. Really streamline the work. Take the recommendations and feedback provided by the team and embed it into the district's most important document, which is our strategic plan. That window is quickly approaching us. And some of the things that's going to make it more difficult is when data is going to be released by the Florida Department of Education. We just received raw data from 3rd grade. Typically, we would receive that before students were out of school, 3 or 4 weeks before they were out of school. We just received it. So there's a lag of information. So we're going to have to make some predictions, which we're pretty good at doing, regarding outcomes, and be flexible in modification of those particular plans. But when you look here, I am going to charge or ask the committee to consider providing recommendations by Thursday, July 8th, which would be a scheduled meeting during that particular week. That would be the opportunity for us to receive recommendations from this committee, which would give us the time to go back and draft strategies, align them into the plan, notify the board as appropriate, and then come back during maybe that week, Tuesday. Well, that would be when I would present the draft strategies, the African American Achievement, to the school board on the 20th, and then 22nd, provide that explicit feedback to the school board. So what I'm asking for is a meeting on July 8th in which we can receive official recommendations. I do have a number of things that we have learned as we've moved through our last several meetings, which are kind of points of reflections. Those may be things you would want to recommend. They are shifts or changes in our organizational behavior based on our interactions and relationships with you. So meet on July 8th, create the plan. July 20th, provide that information to our school board, and then on July 22nd, meet with the committee once again to share that information. That gives us a nice circle of information aligned to the item that I took to the board. So those would be the 2 tasks that stand before us over the course of the summer. And when, obviously, July, as I have information or data available, I will be able to share it in terms of academic outcomes that are, as they're provided from the state, I will provide to the committee and everyone else in the community. So that's what I got.
So you're not anticipating receiving anything other than the raw data in the next month or by that time?
The state has up until July 31st to provide that raw data, those outcomes to us, and then another month for us to evaluate that data to determine whether we will have school grades. But as they give us that data available, we'll be able to evaluate it. We have the information available to us to create our strategic plan. And we've had the opportunity to reflect on our implementation and use our own progress monitoring data to place students in the appropriate courses, to make modifications or changes to programs as we see fit, based on our own internal reflections. So as data comes in available, we would have it. And what I would really want this to be is a fluid process. As information comes back and we learn some things that are very significant, we know the percent tested. And I'll tell you right now, we probably tested a higher percent than the overwhelming majority of districts in our state. I can tell you when you look at our third grade results in comparison to most districts, or almost every district I heard, hate to say it, but it's just the truth, has declined. But not here in the school district of Indian River County. We maintained the 60% proficiency that was in place prior to the pandemic. So I got 16, 17 districts, they've all declined 3%, 5%, 7%, 8%. So you're seeing a drastic decline across the state, with the exception of the school district of Indian River County, where we tested 99% of our third graders. So only 15 students didn't take the assessment. So there's no assumption, well, you only maintained because you didn't test subsets of your community. Not the case, 99%. I don't want to over-brag on that information until I have all of the data, but the initial response and research that I've done says that this district has weathered the pandemic in third grade significantly better than most districts in the state of Florida. That's just the data that we have now. But I believe on the 8th, some of the recommendations that you can provide focus around the other areas of the joint plan. That will be helpful to us. You know, teaching and learning and academics absolutely is a priority for us, but there's a number of areas within the joint plan that have significant influence over those academic outcomes. Those are also areas that we can focus in on.
Okay, and were you talking about Indian River maintaining? That's not on the state website yet.
No, not yet. That information hasn't been released, only sent to districts. So each of the 67 districts have received their student level data. That's all we've received to this point.
Okay. Any questions, ladies? I'm sure you'll get some in a few,
Okay.
maybe not tonight.
Well, I got people for that.
All right. Now, I'd like to thank you for sending the other data, also the hiring data. I believe you sent the teachers as well as the ones who applied for the positions. And they're in, I guess it's not bad, it's in black and white. It's readable. Now, we have the discipline and referrals.
So this is a presentation based on information received from the committee during our last meeting, and really want to start the presentation by thanking the committee to push us to think and reflect upon our implementation. And as I go through the presentation, you'll see some areas that we know we need to continue to problem solve around and put our attention in order to continue to improve the academic performance of students. This presentation will focus solely around our alternative school that we have here in our district, serving grades 6 through 12. This is a historical view of student assignments over the course of the last 5 years. You'll see in 2016 and 17, we serviced 130 students. Those are the number of students in and out of the school over the course of the entire year. And you see some steady movement for 3 years and then a sharp decline from 120 down to 62 total for this specific year. Two things to note in complete transparency. 2019-20, you see that decline. Please keep in mind the last quarter of the school year, we were shut down as a result of the pandemic. 2021, another significant decline. We started with about 62% of our students in school and quickly moved up to about 85%. So that's a little bit more of a stable number than what you see in 1920. But it is a indication that some of the structures that we put in place, we are seeing a return on those particular investments. So overall, 52% decrease in the total number of students enrolled at ACE. Proud of that. 59% decrease in African American students. Proud of that. 39% decrease in white students. So that's kind of a historical perspective looking at overall assignments. This is a very straightforward slide that provides a great deal of information. This looks at the disproportionality of assignments within the different flows of assignment. So for a lack of a best way of saying it, let me start from the bottom and work my way up. You see the orange highlighted in green, disparities in office disciplinary referrals. And you see the risk ratio on the opposite side, ODRs, that's the African American versus white risk ratio. As a reminder, 1 is the foundation. The closer you are to 1, not 0, the more equal it is. So you see a disparity of 2.62, meaning African American student is 2.62 times more likely to receive a disciplinary referral. That right off the bat tells us there's additional opportunities around culturally responsive teaching. There's additional opportunities around classroom management. Additional opportunities around managing a 100-minute block that we moved to last year as a result of the pandemic. There's additional, those tier 2, counselors, quickly modifying a behavior, getting a student back in class, those pre-referral services. Those are all opportunities for us to take a critical look at because we see that as an opportunity for improvement. Now, when you look at the disparities moving up this chart, disparities in assigned disciplinary actions, you see a reduction. And it's not a 1, but it is a 2.06. So 2.62 times more likely to receive a referral, but only 2.06 to receive a disciplinary action. So some of the structures or accountability that we've put in place with administrators regarding what is happening to students, we're seeing that as a sign of direction, moving in the right direction, not all where we want to be, but monitoring what is taking place. You see administrators or those who are processing referrals pushing it back into the classroom, providing student services support versus a higher disparity around disciplining students. So we need to continue to work on that, but we are seeing process there. Then you look at the next one, and keeping in mind this is about CERT and alternative education. Disparity in referrals to CERT. CERT is the team we're going to talk a lot about tonight because that is the team that makes the decision whether a student is attending or not attending the alternative school. A risk ratio of 3.14. That's drastic. That is severely higher than we would like to see in terms of the referral. But when you look at the actions, which is the top screen, the disparities in placement, you see the intervention, the district's arm of oversight is doing its job because the disparity is down to 1.75. So the systems review in terms of is this the appropriate assignment, the alternative school, or is it some other interventions less severe, obviously significant reduction from those being referred to those being assigned. Good job, Ms. Walker. Now, I'll simply cover the next 3 slides. There was questions about, well, how do you get into alternative ed? What's the process? This is the most straightforward way that we could kind of tell the story of a student being assigned to an alternative school. It's not the only example, but it's the most typical example. An office referral is submitted by the administration. The school gathers the information regarding the disciplinary event, identifies the level of behavior, and assigns the designated level of corrective interventions. School conducts and documents all required meetings, manifestation, determination reviews, school-based hearings. The school provides parent notification of a referral to the CERT team. The school submits a completed CERT referral packet, which kind of captures the incident in itself. The CERT facilitator, administrative support review the CERT referral packet together. Then the CERT facilitator conducts the student or contacts the student's parent and guardian to explain the CERT process, make sure they understand the process that's about to go on, and they feel comfortable with the process that's going to be taking place moving forward. Then the multidisciplinary review team review of the CERT case is conducted, consensus on placement and recommendation, recommended supports are being made. Then the principal or designee is informed of the CERT decision. So once again, the assignment to the alternative school is not made by the principal or the assistant principal, only the recommendation is made in this multi-team, multi-number of people on the staff make the actual decision. You notify the parent. Student and parent guards are scheduled for an intake meeting, so you're just not, go get on your bus. There's a intake process that was followed when you attend the alternative school, understanding the procedures and guidelines that are in place, and that kind of highlights the referral process. That kind of walks you through some of the incidents. But as I said, when you look at the referral routes, there's other routes in which you could take. A level 4 or 5 behavior. That's a major infraction at a school, a school site defined by the code of conduct, or that could be an off-campus felony. So when you look at those level 4 and 5 behaviors, the response to that is a consideration or a referral to the CERT team. So those are the most egregious behaviors that are taking place on schools, or an off-campus felony could lead to placement. Administrative placement in alternative school from a previous district. So we have a number of districts that are relatively close to us, and there's a defined process. So as a student is assigned to an alternative school in another district, moves into our district, we still continue to honor that, to provide that appropriate level of support to get them back into the regular school. The next is students who are returning from DJJ, which is kind of a step-down program. I went from a very, I was incarcerated, very structured program. We're going to reacclimate you into the school. That's a structured program. That is a way in which the students would go in there into the alternative school. And then as an IEP decision, and as a former alternative ed principal, when you look at the teacher-student ratio and the systems of support that are available in an alternative school, to say that it's a negative placement is not an accurate or correct statement. Sometimes it's the absolute best placement for a student to be where he or she may be within their life in order to be equipped with the appropriate behaviors to find success in a regular school. Recommendations of the suspension expulsion review team. So as you said, when we were looking back at that high assignment or high referral rate to CERT and the lower assignment, there are a number of options the CERT team can take as an outcome. You return to your particular school that assigns you there with stipulated orders. There's a number of interventions at the school in which made the referral you will remain at, and you will participate in those particular interventions. We may partner you, remain at your home school and partner you with mental health services programs that we work with to provide that additional support or implement additional strategies based on an IEP meeting. You may be placed at the alternative school. That means you go to the referral process and then you are assigned, and the most egregious would be the recommendation for expulsion, and you are assigned to the alternative school with a notification for the right of appeal to that particular hearing. So those are the decisions that team is making. So let's look at some of the outcomes that they're being made. So you look at the percent of referrals, you see the percent of referrals over the course of the school year, 47% African American, 40% white, with 6% being Hispanic or other. That would be great if we were 50% and 50%, but as you know, we are not. This is a busy slide, but it says a lot, and there's a lot of information that's not necessarily within the slide. So the darker hue of the bar at Vero Beach Senior High School says there's 52% of the total population is white, and when you look at the assignments from Vero Beach Senior High School, or the referrals, 52% of those referrals were from white students. Now, at Vero Beach Senior High School, the student population for African American is 20%, but 44% of the referrals for ACE or to the CERT team were from African American students. Sebastian River High School, a smaller number of referrals. So obviously, the smaller the number, the higher a student counts in terms of percentages. So 50% of the students at Sebastian River are white. 20% of the referrals came from white students. Sebastian River, 11% are African American. 60% of the referrals came from African American students. Oslo, once again, you see a high level of disparity, but a small number of referrals when you dig into that data set. 58 versus 75 and 17 versus 50. And then at Gifford Middle School, 40 and 50, 36 and 50. Now these are the outcomes of by race from the decisions made by the CERT team. So 67% of the African American students that were in front of that committee were assigned to the alternative sever. 40% of the white students were assigned, referred to an IEP, equal 10%, returned to the home school, 29% and 30%, returned to the school with substance abuse counseling, that's 25% of the white students. And you look at the reasons for being assigned, there's a high correlation of white students being assigned for substance abuse. So therefore, you see that. The highest percent for African Americans was actually fighting. And we had some big fights at Vero Beach Senior High School this year, which led to a high number of placements. A one-time event, which led to some placements. And then a student who was up to be reviewed and then was assigned to a specific program outside of the school system, and that would be reviewed upon his return. Yes, sir.
Let me go back a slide. The slide where you have the 4 schools, Vero Beach, Sebastian, Oslo Middle, and Gifford Middle School. Is there a reason that Storm Grove is not on them?
Because they had no referrals this year. Yes, sir.
All right, and Gifford Middle has 36% black students at that school?
36% black students, and of that of the referrals, 50% came from black students, yes.
So it's the middle school with the highest number of black students. What's the percentage at,
Percent.
Yes, yeah, highest percentage thing. Thank you. Okay. What about Storm Grove?
Storm Grove has about, I think it's 11%, 11.65% African American students, but they have a much larger student population.
Okay.
So that is, those are reflections that I'll share later. So opportunities for improvement for us, some were discussed at our last meeting. Being more proactive as an organization. We know which students, based on early warning indicators, need the support. For us to wait for them to get in trouble is a disservice. So some of the AIM initiative, which is providing mentors to very specific students based on early warning indicators, which is I've missed more than 10% of the year, I've failed a core class, I've received a disciplinary referral, and I failed a reading or math class. That data is clear. It's research-based saying those students have a higher percent of not graduating. If we know that, now we're bound to act. So pairing those students using some of the services that are available at the alternative school to get in front of behaviors is key. We will do that as we enter the new school year. Continue training around classroom management, culturally responsive teaching, maximize our classroom management. Those are also key opportunities. Additional resources around student services. So we added counselors for our elementary schools last year. We added success coaches, more intentional training for our success coaches next year. We'll be pulling them in going into the opening of schools to make sure that that is taking place. More time with common planning. So a great deal of planning for our teachers. You cannot expect a teacher to deliver the quality lessons that we expect for them to deliver without providing them the opportunity to plan for those lessons while they are at work. So we've created, through a very aggressive and innovative contract, time for our teachers to plan. We've removed some of those duties No teacher went to school to open doors and shut doors. You went there to change the lives of kids. And there's other people in the building who can make sure kids are getting in classes while we're honoring the time for teachers to be planning. That will help cut down on that initial risk ratio that I shared, and then continuing to monitor the structures. And then when a student returns, also on the backside, equally important, not necessarily covered in this particular presentation, but the research is also clear that a student who goes to alternative ed, finds success, earns their way to return to the home school, but if not provided that same continued support, more times than not regresses back to the same behaviors that got them there. So using alternative ed, both in a proactive, keeping them students from getting there, and then following up and continuing to provide that direct support are initiatives that we'll be implementing this year. I think the big realization here is classroom instruction, quality instruction, managing the behavior. That is a big realization for us. And that's kind of some of the push that you all provided, and we're thankful for that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any question you may have.
One, I think,
Oh, no, I was just asking Eric how I did.
One, I think, Dr. Moore, at some point, don't know when, how do we get to where a school is racially identifiable like we have it, like that, like with Gifford? I remember a time when we had Dr. Jones open up Gifford, and everybody wanted to get in there. There was about 1,100 for each school, 1,100 or 1,200. And now the numbers are way down at Gifford and is so high and racially identifiable with 36%. We used to be from 9 to 27% is what we held the ratio at in the 1994 order. So you may not have the answer now, but I think that's going to be
I have strong opinions about that. I think one of the things that we did, and that's a big topic. That's the right topic, because that has significant influence over the entire system of where we're placing our students. The alternative ed placement is a very small scope of students, and we were able to expand it to address classroom management to help kids from ever getting there. But we've expanded choice. So one of the first things I did when I got here is to say, let's open up choice for all schools, provide transportation to all schools, and allow schools to be competitive. I feel strongly that a school that parents have direct access to and can conveniently get to is probably the best school for that child to go to. And when you're transporting students all over the district, or to meet a ratio, to put them on a bus and send them to a school just to meet a ratio, I don't think that's in the best interest of children. So some of the things the system has done historically, we could move away from through choice and allow Gifford to say, hey, come to Gifford because you receive a quality education, and guess what? You can stop by on your way to work or on your way home from work. It's not a 25, 35-minute drive. So creating that environment helps us to be more balanced along assignments versus trying to force something that is just that, forced. So I think we can improve upon that with the appropriate programming and the appropriate marketing.
Okay, because I'm from the understanding, I'm hearing you, and when we had, I forget what they called it, Dr. Jones, when you only allowed a certain amount of students to go there, and then that enrollment stopped at that other school, and that kept the schools balanced. And so that when you say we've opened up choice, then that kind of broke down the walls and let everybody just go to one place. So you had to have move-in portables or build other bigger facility out at Storm Grove, or what?
No, we have not. They switched the boundaries. We're going into our second year of choice. So the shifts or modifications of assignments based because of the pandemic were, not what we intended. Looking at programming and being very specific on how we're marketing will help offset that.
Mm-hmm. So then it's on the second year. So 2 years ago, all the middle schools were even.
No, the there wasn't the ability for students to have the choices that they now have. So it wasn't even. I don't. They were probably very similar to what they are right now.
Okay. Yeah, so the bottom line is, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how do we not get to a point where we have racially identifiable schools where kids are not able to mix in and socially learn with all their peers. With you understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand, and I think the choice process allows us to monitor where students are going, looking at programming, and placing based on meeting the criteria of programs, as well as looking at ensuring schools represent the demographics of the district. So when you look at our magnet schools, all of our magnet schools are reflective of our community in terms of overall percent. When you look at some of our neighborhood schools, they are not. So the theory of action continues to play out through choice by replicating that magnet process through choice.
Okay. Yeah, we have to, and I think where some schools have, some places have met unitary status, and then they revert back to these places where all the schools are, that's the Hispanic school over here, and this is the white school over here, and this is the black school over here. And we have not had that in, I guess almost since, I think I came here to Citrus in 1978. So it has been a long time since we had that kind of thing. I went to Citrus, Gifford Middle 6, Gifford Middle 7, Vero Beach Junior High School, Vero Beach High School, and it was all a mixture, and I don't think we had racially identifiable schools to that point. And I think there's got to be some kind of thought down the road, and I'm pretty sure you've been asked about that before, and where we don't want to go there. Okay.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Any questions on you're done with the?
I'm done with that, yes, sir.
Okay, the team. What does the team look like with the referrals?
Vaughn, you want to answer that question?
To the 13?
Yes.
What, do you want to know, like, the positions or the racial?
Sure, like 4 males, 4 females, black, Hispanic, and white, and
That's a good question. Okay, so there are,
sorry. Because obviously it's going to be a diverse team.
it is.
A diverse team, and well, with the administration, I think it switches out by school, but
Oh, okay. So it's a changing thing.
yeah, based on the school.
Is it volunteer? It is. All right, so the regular consistent members are 1 male and 4 females. There are 5 females. There are 3 African Americans and 3, 3 whites.
Okay. All right. So if Kevin Browning comes in, and you said that demographics change. So he comes in, he's just thrown a rock and hit the teacher in the head or hit somebody in the head. And now he's going to be, so the principal is bringing me in, right? And then we have all these people who are discussing what's happening and whether or not the student deserves to stay at ACE or not. I think I'm making it very simple. I'm just trying to understand the process. We were talking about the process and how students get there, and just to make it clear, sometimes I have to see things in crayon. So that's basically it.
So what's your question? Say it again.
That's it. So that's basically it. The kid comes in and you have a regular committee that sits there?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Don't bring the student,
right,
okay.
the students don't come.
So they just look at the case?
We just look at the case, and we allow the school to present their case, and then the team is asked questions for clarification purposes. typically about interventions, most often about the interventions that have been attempted prior to, because there's a very strong focus on what the school has done to address the students' behavior in the past. And that really does oftentimes impact or weigh in on the team's decision.
Okay.
We have, and so just to answer your question, let me go back again, because I forgot Mr. Brown, he's actually on the team as well. But, so there are 2 males. But there's a principal, a director, 2 mental health counselors, 2 ESC program specialists, and then myself.
Sounds like a very good team.
It is. And they're very, I mean, and so when you look at the decisions that are made, I would honestly say probably the folks that, the mental health folks are very, very vocal about, again, what are the students' needs, how have they been addressed, and is this going to be certainly the best placement? We also look at, the long-term impacts for the students, obviously. Can their needs be met at the school? We look at their academic records. We look at their attendance. We look at their parents' input. Their parents' input is also very influential. It's always a part of the discussion because some parents say, I think this is the best thing, or some parents say, they may be concerned about, ACE being like, this out-of-control place where their students are in shackles and things like that. So just a lot of time is spent, as Mr. Seymour said, we're never too busy to kind of consider or welcome parents' input and their wishes for their children. So
parents don't have to feel intimidated.
right. Well, they don't come to the meeting?
And not whenever you.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Is this committee by design set up to reconcile whether or not the students have any ACEs? Are they looking at that as a factor in the behavior, or is the mental health professional covering that angle?
Well, we're really fortunate to have both of the mental health specialists. They work in the secondary schools, so oftentimes they'll know about the child and their history. They're very big on recommending that we do what's called a circle of care, so that even if the student is going to ACE or whether they're returning, oftentimes it's what we recommend, so that we bring in the parent, the student, mental health agencies, whomever can support the child, and really come up with a kind of like a reintegration plan. So if they return to the school, here's what we think you needed. So we're going to sit down with you and your parent, and we're going to help you figure out how you can be successful. So whether that's goal setting, whether that's meeting weekly or bi-weekly or monthly with a counselor, whether that is participation in our substance awareness council, because a lot of what we're seeing really is substance abuse issues. We want to certainly provide students the opportunity to get treatment, because we know that that's what they need. So that everything that we're doing now with the success coaches, with the counselors, all of that really is, we're trying to take a more prevention or intervention-based approach rather than just a punishment. So yes, to answer your question, that is definitely considered.
And the vote, does it have to be unanimous, or is it?
We try to reach consensus. So if there's a member who says, I really feel strongly that the students' needs can be met at the school, then we'll ask them to say, so why? So tell us, help us. And we can be, we can persuade or redirect each other based on the recommendations that are made. And again, like the ESC program specialists are really good at identifying the students' reviewing their history, identifying needs, maybe even gaps in testing or accommodations. Like all of that is considered, and frankly, sometimes if those things haven't been met, that could be a factor for a student having to return. So it is really not something that is ever set in stone. Every case is definitely considered on the basis of what the student needs, what we think is going to be the best in the best interest of the students. And a lot of times our students come in and they're failing, like they have really low GPAs and things like that. So all of those things are taken into account when the bottom line, the ultimate goal, our ultimate again, goal is to determine what we think is going to be best for the students' long-term success, what's going to be the most helpful.
questions. But you guys kept me handcuffed and short tonight. So,
No, I think it's important, and I thank you all for the questions, because it really is important for these challenging and struggling students.
yes. Thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Ms. Walker.
I have a quick question regarding the timeline, the suggested timeline. The July 8th date is 3 weeks away from today. I think it would be in our best interest to decide which section of the joint plan that we would plan to make those recommendations. As Dr. Moore said, we are still waiting on the data from the DOE, so it would be, we could, but it would be difficult, I think, for us to make recommendations in that regard as of yet. But again, just to go through that joint plan and determine which areas we'll focus on to make recommendations. I don't know if that kind of piggybacks off of what you have to say, so maybe we should hear you out in that regard first and then make our.
Let's hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I asked Ms. Davis to share this report card that Ms. Green had put together, really just to kind of guide the work that the committee is responsible for doing. And so I certainly think that, you know, we can make it our own or whatever. It's just a guide. We talked a little bit last week about, the last time we met, about exemplars. And so just really using this as an example of how we can move forward. So if you'll notice, each section is included in this report card. And then we give a synopsis of what the expectation is or the recommendation, and then the bullet points. What you see highlighted are the areas that we still hadn't seen compliance with. So the other areas, we were able to see that there was evidence, and then when you go down, you see the mentoring compliance determination or whatever the compliance determination was for that specific section. And so we asked, was that, at that point when we're reviewing, has that compliance been met? And then what our rationale was for whether or not it was met. And then just some recommendations for how to move forward. Obviously, we would switch some of those dates as we look forward. But this really just kind of highlights those areas that we've recommended, and then gives us a vehicle, certainly a visual, to be able to make those determinations.
So again, the highlighted areas are the areas that were determined not to be evident.
Right.
At the time.
Right.
Okay. So it looks like, and I know a lot of work has been put into the recruitment of African Americans. I think this would be an easy area for us to identify what work has been done and what has not been done. So I think this definitely could be an area of focus in our recommendations.
I'm of the opinion that we should wait to get the data before making recommendations.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely but at least to know which data we want to focus, or we need to request in order to make these checks or not.
Well, I appreciate the data, I mean, the way the documents have been compiled, thank you. They're certainly streamlined and much more legible and coherent for the work ahead, but I'm still gonna defer to what I think is my best judgment in waiting until I see that information, because it will influence, and it should influence my thought process about what I'm examining, and in turn making as a recommendation. I understand the need to want, to set a timeline, but I just would not, personally, I can't.
So I believe in the last meeting, we had tons of information and a presentation from Ms. Hofer on the current practices, structures, so on and so forth, in regards to recruitment. So maybe to revisit that, we do have that in here, but again, the moment you print it, it's old data. So we would definitely need to see how many African Americans, so on and so forth, have been hired who is still in the process, what that actually looks like. So definitely requesting the current hiring data would definitely help us in that work to see exactly what has been done. I also am aware of the recruitment process and career fairs and things of that nature with the HBCUs. So a lot of these things can be checked off, but I totally understand you need the data to support the check. But I can definitely speak to, because some of the work I've actually been involved in, so I know for a fact, because I've been in the process, that it is happening. So I guess it's a matter of figuring out what we need to request in order to.
Yeah, so the question that I would have is, or the suggestion is, can we go through each of the sections maybe and see, because certainly for student achievement, we need to have that data, right?
Yes.
So I'm wondering if we just look at can we just look at the different sections and determine whether or not we can move forward with making recommendations or, you know, confirming that those recommendations have been fulfilled. So can we do, because there are multiple sections. So as you're saying, in terms of the African American teachers and the instructional staff, I feel like we can assess whether or not those recommendations have been implemented.
Like the teacher
No.
mentoring program, we know
Right.
that exists.
Right.
I don't know what type of data we would need to request in order to substantiate that.
Well, we have suggestions. So, so for example, is there proof of a new teacher mentoring program? And has that been introduced during the new teacher orientation? Was that, you know, were the teachers informed that this is something that they have an opportunity to participate in? And that would simply be maybe like an agenda. That's that agenda item that says that information does exist, or that did happen, or it will
Gotcha.
happen.
Yes.
So I think that, you know, again, one of the reasons I wanted to introduce this and share this with the team is just because we can talk through it. And if it doesn't work, that's fine, but just so we know that it's there. And it may help to guide the work that we're endeavoring.
I definitely appreciate this. I think it's, like you said, it's very comprehensive. We know what has been done, what hasn't been done, and it guides us to the information that needs to be requested. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The second update, which is the update from March through June with all the outcome data that we have available to us. And what we've done is, that is the work of the committee, the prior committee led by Ms. Green that you were on, take those recommendations along with the goals within the joint plan, and then looked at the segments of work that were being done between January and March, and then again March until April, and then provide you a summary of those things as well as the documentation. And we do that to make it as simple as possible for the 5 volunteers who are sitting at this table during the summer. Thank you. And that would be, to me, the easiest way to look at, has the system made progress within these particular areas? And there will be some, because you don't have academic outcomes, that you may not feel comfortable. And there may be some that you have academic outcomes where you may not feel comfortable because of the pandemic. They're both true. But I think what we can provide you is that information, which kind of has that information right there, and then supporting evidence right after you could say, yes, no, maybe so. And I don't want the committee to feel as if it's a one and done opportunity to make recommendations. This should be a continuous conversation that becomes fluid. Now, we do have kind of a start and stop time in terms of the creation of the strategic plan, which looks at the annual strategies that we're going to address. That becomes very, very helpful. But as we as a system learn things or reflect on our practice, we don't wait for the next year's strategic plan to embed it. If we know it's something that we need to do, you'll see throughout the year. I mean, I provide quarterly updates on the African American Achievement Plan and the strategic plan. And the actions within each of those updates is specifically different to the time of the year in which we are in. So what we're really trying to do is create this fluid conversation around this accountability meeting regarding the progress around the joint plan, where we're seeing it, receiving that information, reflecting on it, and then creating new actions, which I bring back to the board. So I don't want you to feel pressured as if it's a one-and-done opportunity. This is a big opportunity to look at our strategic plan, give influence on it, and our African American Achievement Plan, which we are going to enhance and be excited to share with you, because it will be embedded within the strategic plan and not two separate documents that we struggled through all of last year, the 100-page document and the 14-page plan for 5 years. Very specific, very targeted, versus a 100-page document plan for a year, just looking at it was swing and a miss is what it was, but embedding those two documents. So those two dates afford us the opportunity to get that information back. I put reflections up here. And these are just things that I credit this conversation around that we've learned. So if you look at the first one, post all equity committee agendas and backup documentation on board docs. We just started doing that. That was not necessarily a recommendation that you learned, but it was a realization of the system on how to be more effectively communicate. Align the 21-22 African American Achievement Plan. The focus areas align to our annual targets identified with our Achieve 25 with our district strategic plan. Once again, that's something that we learned as we've gone through these particular meetings. May not be a recommendation that you would make, but a realization from the system on how to improve. We will be making a transition to monthly progress monitoring data aligned to the 2018 joint plan from Excel spreadsheets, that Mr. Browning likes to comment on how long they are and small and fonts they are, to very easy to read dashboards that can be public facing not only for this community, but the entire world. We're working on that. That could be a recommendation. That was birthed through our own reflection. We started to provide one-page portfolio summaries depending on what's being asked for to the equity committee. That kind of takes it out of the weeds and gives a overview of the initiative or program that the committee's asking for. More of a research briefing, which is easier for any individual to understand, getting away from some of the nomenclature of education lingo and jingo. And then monitor progress collaborative with the development of a unitary status sustainability board policy. That we haven't mentioned that to this committee, but our school board unanimously approved an item for me to work with the NAACP executive team to create a school board policy that ensures the sustainability of the work that we are doing collectively with the NAACP as well as this committee. And this would be created in collaboration that ensures, as you were referencing, Mr. Browning, you get unitary status and you come back 2 years later and you're right back to what put you into unitary, not having unitary status. Pinellas is a good example. So this is a bold, courageous step that we will be engaging in the conversation to create this plan. And then in years forward, this committee doesn't go away. This committee remains in existence. That policy gives us the authority to continue this accountability conversation, to continue to grow this work, and we don't forget about it or just turn our direction in other ways. And that was an item brought by Dr. Jones, who was here, so we really, really value that work. And looking forward to making that a recommendation to ensure that we don't stop. Unitary status is just another day. And then we continue on with this work. This policy makes sure that work will continue. And it's going to be, in my mind, a very powerful policy that outlives me, outlives board members, and continues to grow us as a community. So it's going to be a challenge to get that policy right. So those would be possible recommendations. Nothing to do with academic outcomes, improves the flow of communication, accelerates our understanding of where we need to shift or modify. I do think in the next update that we would provide, you would have time to reflect on that documentation. Just checking, make sure that we... the 3-month update from... So by the end of June. So as typical, we'd be able to provide that with the the week of review prior to that particular meeting. So that looks at the work of each particular office over a 3-month period. You've had the other document for about 2 months now, which looks at March, January to March. So that gives you a lot of documentation that's been collected, a lot of data that's available, and as the data continues to flow, I would produce it. So that may make your lives a little bit easier versus saying, let's get this or let's get this. The district can be upfront, transparent, and here's what we did around the joint plan. And you don't have to go searching, because if it's not there, don't give us credit for it. It means we didn't do it. And if we did do it and we said, oh, well, we'll go and get that, we don't deserve to have it because we didn't provide it. That's just how I think.
Okay, so ladies, thank you, Dr. Moore. If hearing recruitment, if that's what I'm hearing, what I would be, well, first, let me steal somebody's water. I'm done.
You can have mine. I haven't used it.
So for instance, in my mind, I'd be looking at, okay, what's the turnover? We're hiring 100 new teachers this year, maybe, I don't know, probably 10%, 100 teachers, and then what are we going to look like with that 100? That's the first part. The second part is the schools that are in need of meeting the unitary status. Have we hit some focus on them? And, and we don't have to have 100% to just want to make some progress. We'd love 100%. But so the first thing would be the turnover. What does that look like if it's 20 out of whatever, 100, and then the schools, this school hasn't had any black teachers in 10 years. Have we tried to rectify that? And then there was another thing, and I've forgotten what it was, but those would be the type, and
You want
don't
a
expect an
couple of
answer
updates?
now. Yeah.
Just
go.
a little update where we are. So we're about halfway done hiring. There is going to be right around 100. Every day it could change because, someone might move to a different school or retire, but it's slowing down. So the past month's been very, very busy because they got out of school and then people make decisions about what they're going to do.
Yes.
But right now, where we stand, we've hired, and when I say hired, I mean the offer has been given, the candidate has said yes. They still need to go through the background check through HR and be
Yes.
approved by the board. But when we say hired at this point, that's what we mean. They've been offered the job, the interviewing's been done. So right now, as of today, there's been 46 hires, and we're at a 36% rate of hiring African Americans of those 46. So, and then like another thing that you mentioned, because, my little update that you like to have it, in addition to teachers that have already been at the schools, Beachland has hired 1 African American, Dodgertown 2, Gifford 1, Osceola Magnet 1, Pelican Island 1, Rosewood 2, Sebastian Elementary 1, Storm Grove 3, Sebastian River High School 2, Treasure Coast 1, VBE 1, Vero Beach High School 1. So of that 16 teachers, that's what it comes out to, of the 46. That's kind of where the spread is today.
Okay.
So I might go back to my computer, and there might be another form that pops up. So when someone says yes, I get an email notification. So I print that, and then I make my own little spreadsheet so I know where everybody's going. So I'm addressing what the gap is, as we talked about last time on the dashboard. But the dashboard is not updated unless the person has been processed and put into focus. So that's slowly starting to happen, and then, of course, July 1, everything kind of rolls over. Student populations will change. People move, or the 8th grade class leaves, and the next class is smaller. So I'm excited to get to July to kind of see, okay, now here's our current reality of where we are. But it is a daily thing that is happening, and I've even sat in on some interviews at certain schools.
Okay, awesome. As of today, let me say it different. Is it possible for us to get exactly what you just said in a memo?
Sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. So then we have something to
Like a
put in
little
our book.
update from tonight.
Yes.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
And then we are not counting people who have been transferred or?
No.
Okay, these are new hires.
Yes,
All
only
right,
new to
excellent.
the district.
Yes, okay, and so then that sounds like, to me, it sounds like mindsets and progress change.
There are
Because and
transfers.
there's ownership. Yeah, there's
Right.
there are transfers, I understand. But I mean, no transfers to, because Kevin Browning can't find or won't find, so we're gonna transfer somebody over there. So I don't, yeah,
Not
not
those.
that, okay.
Not those,
All right,
yeah.
thank
They
you.
willingly
Yeah, because if
went.
somebody wants to go to,
And they apply.
and they apply,
Apply for that posting, even if they're currently working in the district. They
Yeah.
still apply for the posting, and they still go through the interview process and the selection process, and they still get sent to HR to be processed, and then it's approved. That transfer is approved.
yes, okay. Because I don't care if somebody wanted to leave my school, I didn't care, you
Right.
go. If you think you want to get better, you've been leaving a job or whatever, go. Don't hinder people, let them go. So,
I want to
yeah,
go
I
because
don't
my
mind that.
daughter's now in high school, and I want to go teach where she is. Those kind of things are happening too.
Love it.
Okay.
Okay, and then any other questions that, I just want to give you kind of what will be, some of what we'll be looking for so that it's not,
Well-
you have time to,
When I saw that, I was like, yes, we do, yes, we do, yes, we do, yes, we do, like Atava was saying. So it is, I provide all of that information all the time for Joint Plan Update, African American Achievement Plan Update, where I'm looking at that all the time and building my, backup documentation for all of those things.
Yes.
Career fairs, the communication with IRCEA, as far, I talked to Jennifer today, whether it's an email or a conversation. The nice part is the vice president of IRCEA, who is African-American, he has been involved in a lot of the career fairs with me. So when we have 10 minutes of downtime or in between candidates, we're like, okay, what do you think about this? Or is there something that you want to suggest that we haven't done? So Mr. Johnson, or Coach Johnson, as I call him, probably is tired of me and is on vacation now, but that happened, there's been a lot of communication with IRCEA.
who is that, Jermaine?
Yeah, Jermaine. I was just giving.
I hired him at the Great Florida Teach-In.
There you go.
Him and John
He's still
Boldo.
here. And he's
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yes.
Came from New York.
Yes, so I will get you a little summary of what was
Thank you.
discussed tonight.
Thank you. So like if you go to the next section you were talking about, is there anything that we want to
So I just
brainstorm?
wonder, and I just want to be clear, I just want us to be clear as a team, if we choose to use this to guide the work, like, I think it would certainly help us to know where we need to focus. Because let's just say, for example, Mrs. Hofer provides all that information. At this point, I would say that we could probably move forward from mentoring. So we take that off of the, kind of the agenda. So we look at, okay, what else? It will help us to determine where we need to focus our attention most. And then, what we need to ask for, what will be helpful for us to determine that. But I think if we can just go through and look at the ones that certainly, as Dr. Bristol indicated, we won't be doing anything right now with student achievement because that data is not available for us. But there are things that I think, transportation, for example, there's just one, proof of the number of students accessing bus transportation broken down by student groups. I would imagine that information is pretty easy for us to get. Then we're at that point, unless we have additional recommendations or there are more things that we want to consider, for that point from what has already been recommended, then we would kind of check off transportation. So then it would come back to, I think, a lot of us being able to really focus on student achievement, knowing that we've already, satisfied those things. Unless something else comes up, we want to make an additional recommendation, that certainly would be, we will welcome that. But I think if we can go through and look at what we've already done, if it's been done, then let's just check it off. Dr. Bristol, any thoughts? Go for it.
It still feels rushed.
Okay.
It's logical, it makes sense, but we're just having this meeting, so to take that vote is premature.
Vote?
Well,
To say we're
yeah,
gonna do this?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
To say that we're gonna move on this,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
well, let's at least get more familiar with it and have more suggestions when we come. And we've made, sounds like some good strides with new teachers coming in.
Absolutely.
I guess, and I totally validate where you're coming from, but if we're speaking in terms of moving the work forward, we have to do something. And I do believe, as Ms. Walker stated, there are some things that are easy to check off because we do have evidence of them. It's about receiving that in the monthly report. We can make some, I'm not saying, let's
It's
just
done.
tackle it all, but those things that are verifiable through that report, I think at that time, we can actually, in that moment, go on and agree upon, as a committee, which boxes we can check off based on the information that we will have a week or so to review. Because you said that the report should be,
Yes, so the 3-month update will be provided before the end of June. That will include all the different sections within the African American resource allocation. There is data and there is evidence within that section 6, I believe, African American resource allocation. So we don't have the FSA outcomes, but also included in that section are disparities in discipline and special education placement. And so today, you had the discipline information that was shared with you, a portion of it. We also have other discipline information that's readily available for the entire year, including the annual outcomes. So there is data within that section, but all of the different sections will be provided with an update at the end of June.
so I guess I'm asking if we can use that information to check off the things that we were able to verify and agree as a committee that they are verified with the data that is before us. If the data is not in front of us, then obviously we won't check it off. But I would
just prefer to do it all at the same time, because I think that to do it piecemeal, to do some now, and say, well, we can just check this off without having the data. I don't know what the data is going to reflect. I don't want to make any presumptions. I appreciate the perspective. I don't have any reason to doubt that it's going to be other than what has been presented this evening, but I should have it just to be informed and to be very intentional about making that decision. I definitely want to move forward, and I think that we are making, steps forward, just even having the documents in the format that they are so that we can have this conversation now is a huge step forward. And so we're not discounting that, but I just, let's take the next step, which would be to meet. I didn't know, I saw the materials highlighting the July 8th as a timeline or a time frame, but the superintendent explained the context of it. So now I would like, I don't know, maybe a meeting before then. I don't want to encumber people's time, but I just don't think that, and I'm just voicing what is the reservation for, moving without enough information. I'd like to be able to speak with clarity of thought because I have everything in front of me that at least I can speak to broadly.
So when you're saying data, are you saying what, so for example with mentoring, what Mrs. Hofer provides to us, like that we have concrete evidence? Is that what you're saying, or do you mean specifically the student data?
I mean, whatever, if there's more material to come in whatever format, I'd like to have it before I start checking any boxes off.
Sure.
And as I read through it, there were things obviously in my mind that I could see that I could check off, which I did. But to have a meeting around making, those checks at this point, again, for me, is not best practice. I should have all of whatever you're proposing or bringing to the table so that we can look at it comprehensively. I don't think that it would take up any more time or delay,
So I just want to be, so if we do, so for example, a meeting on July 1st, right, prior to the July 8th meeting, we get together and we go through maybe we just use this time to go through the report card and whatever supporting documentation we have, I think that works really well.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because it's the first time that we're being able to talk about it, so I don't want to miss anything by moving, I don't want to say too quickly, but without having, if more information is coming, let it come. Let us review it and then come together and then move lock and step accordingly, yeah.
I think that's what you're saying too, Mrs. Patterson, right? Is that as long as we have that evidence, we don't want to move forward without having evidence. I think we're
I wasn't suggesting it, you were saying that.
Okay.
But I got the impression that we were wanting to do something with it tonight.
No, not at all.
Not tonight.
I like,
But we have to be clear about that, right?
Oh, no,
We need
right.
to
Yeah,
understand that.
absolutely.
That clarification is necessary, for
Absolutely.
sure,
No,
yeah.
not
Not
tonight.
No, we're not moving that fast, no.
Definitely earlier,
Want the
right? So no,
documentation
that
and the evidence, for
But by
sure.
the 8th,
But we think that the student data may not be there. I think what we're saying is, it's easy. Mrs. Hofer can provide us that mentoring data really quickly, and not quickly, like in the sense of we're rushing through it. But that information is easily attainable, so we can go through that section where we know that it's gonna take more time to analyze the student data and that kind of stuff to see. It's not gonna be necessarily as straightforward.
let's go back to this slide here.
oh,
I don't want the committee to think the checks in the box makes me a little bit nervous. You're not checking anything off as if it's done. Those final recommendations come in December. All we're seeking for is feedback and recommendations to improve our implementation. So
I like that
at this
word,
point,
feedback.
no I'm not asking for an evaluation. I would agree that would be rushed, but based on the documentation provided, basically at the 6-month point, is kind of for additional feedback. And as I put up there, doesn't have to be specific to academic outcomes, any of the specific areas. And I agree that I think there's some areas where we've made significant progress. And to be honest with you, in 15 years, there's still progress more to be made. So we're just looking for, hey, this is some progress monitoring feedback as we get into the point of the year where we're creating our strategic plan. So these are just recommendations, don't necessarily need all of the academic outcome. I can tell you from, as a system leader, all of the data that we will have is gonna be subject to a deep analysis of where students were, the environments they were in, to make assumptions about academic outcomes without fully understanding a year like any other year and how kids went through that particular year would have us going in directions that we would not want to go in. So this strategic plan in terms of how we're shifting or modifying will be significantly different. So I don't want anyone to feel rushed. We have to evaluate, and there's nothing due to the courts or anything like that.
Okay.
This is just us giving feedback to create our strategic plan. And as I mentioned before, this is our strategic plan is probably one of the most fluid in the state, if not the nation.
Okay.
okay, so I
I think
heard,
the operative term there was feedback. That's, registers a lot differently for me. Okay.
Excellent.
and I think I heard maybe the first, might have been July 1st to look at something, or are we still sticking
No,
with
then
the-
we can do July 8th because, yeah.
Oh, just for the feedback, okay,
You
good.
said you wanted a meeting prior to the July 8th.
Well,
meeting,
when
so
he,
no longer?
when he clarified that it's
Okay.
feedback, then
Okay.
that's fine, because I was thinking that what was due in December was due on the 8th.
No.
No.
Or some, semblance of, an early draft of it. And I just didn't want, not even the turnaround time being the concern as much as just not having all of that information to begin to, take dives into that. I just didn't want to go there.
So it is the 8th, and we know we will have at least some feedback on recruitment and whatever else Dr. Moore has for us.
I'm also not I think it was the initial suggestion, Ms. Patterson, about wanting to take different sections. I still need the big picture, so if I mean, obviously I can look through it and make recommendations, but I'm not, I want everybody to look at the whole thing too.
No, we certainly, we really do. I think.
Because I think
again,
naturally, we're going to find areas that align more with our strengths, where we're gonna have maybe more input in one section than another, but that's why this committee is set up the way that it is, so that, you know, we can cover all of the subject areas here. But to divide it up, I'm just not, I don't think that.
I was
that would
thinking
be-
in terms of
Altogether.
not being able to address the academic
Yeah.
portion of it. We can look at all the other parts, but obviously, because we don't have that data, we wouldn't be able to even offer
Right.
any feedback. So that's, I just wanted to offer clarification
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. Definitely to look at it comprehensively.
Okay, well, July 8th it
What do you
is.
think, Ms. Pender?
Yeah, Ms. Pender.
It's time for me to get out of this state.
July 8th it is, and I think, Dr. Moore, I'm going to call you and perhaps Mr. Seymour and need to have a discussion, a little bit more understanding of something, and just for me. All right, and we're almost done. Who's A, B, and TB?
Tony Brown.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Barenborg, thank you for showing up. And Mr. Brown, thank you. Dr. Jones, it's always a pleasure. Love you to the moon and back. All right. Now, can we call it this meeting to a close? Wasn't that long? We're closed right now. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and helping us with this work.